28, 29, 30. A young woman knelt on a supermarket floor, both hands locked over the chest of an old man who was not breathing, driving compressions into him with the full weight of her body, a gun barrel pressed against the back of her head. "I said nobody moves." She didn't stop. "He's having a heart attack," she said, not looking up, not breaking rhythm. "If I stop, he dies. You can shoot me. But then you've got a dead old man and a dead cashier on the floor when the police arrive. 2 bodies instead of 0, and right now you have 0, so I'm going to keep counting." The metal stayed against her skull. 1, 2, 3, 4. The robber's hand was shaking. She could hear it in his breathing, the specific ragged panic of a man whose plan had just grown a corpse he didn't budget for. 5, 6, 7. And through the tall front windows of the store, across the black mirror of the parking lot, the first red and blue lights began to bleed. The woman counting compressions was 25 years old. Her name was Wendy Achebe. She was a cashier on the night shift and a nursing student by day, and 4 minutes ago, her biggest problem had been a tuition payment due Friday that she was $40 short on. The old man under her hands, gray, slack, his lips going the color of ash, was a stranger she had helped find his credit card 20 minutes earlier. She did not know that he was the father of the most dangerous man in the city. She did not know that the same man was, at that exact moment, pulling body armor over his head 4 blocks away. And she did not know, not yet, that one of the 4 men pointing guns around that supermarket was someone she had once loved. 8, 9, 10, she kept counting. A nursing student is doing CPR on a dying stranger with a gun pressed to her head, and she refuses to stop. She doesn't know the old man is the Korean Mafia Boss's father. She doesn't know one of the robbers is her ex-boyfriend. And she doesn't know the man about to breach that door in tactical gear is the most dangerous man in the city. If you're already locked in, do me one favor. Subscribe right now, because the next 60 minutes do not let go. Let's rewind 47 minutes and watch how an ordinary Tuesday turned into the night that changed everything. 47 minutes earlier, Wendy Achebe was failing to memorize the 12 cranial nerves. She had them written on an index card taped to the side of her register at the Han Mayam 24-hour mart, a discount supermarket wedged between a laundromat and a shuttered phone repair shop in one of the older districts of the city. Olfactory, optic, oculomotor. She mouthed them between customers, the way some cashiers hummed pop songs, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens. She was 25. Nigerian-American, Igbo on both sides, born in Houston and raised by a mother who had crossed an ocean with 2 suitcases and a conviction that her daughter would become something the family could say out loud with pride. A nurse, a doctor, someone who saved people. Wendy had been 3 semesters from her nursing degree when her life detonated. She didn't think about the detonation if she could help it, but the index card was a kind of scar tissue. Every cranial nerve she memorized at this register at 1 a.m. was a small act of defiance against the version of her life that had tried to end her. The store was nearly empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The freezer section hummed. Outside, the parking lot held 3 cars in a wet shine from an earlier rain. At register 4, Wendy scanned a bottle of soy sauce, a bag of rice, and a sleeve of instant coffee for a man in a delivery uniform, told him to have a good night, and went back to her card. Vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus. The bell on the front door chimed. An old man came in. He was small and neat, maybe 70, in a quilted vest and the kind of soft cap that older Korean men wear like a second scalp. He moved slowly, not frail exactly, but unhurried, the pace of a man who had earned the right to take his time. He nodded at Wendy the way polite elders do, and she nodded back and smiled, because she had been raised to greet her elders, and because he had a kind face. He took a basket. He went to the produce section, and he began, with enormous seriousness, to evaluate pears. Wendy watched him out of the corner of her eye while she flipped her index card. He picked up a pear, turned it, smelled it, set it down, picked up another. The man treated pear selection like a diamond appraisal. And there was something about it, the focus, the dignity, the total absorption in a small good thing, that made her like him before he'd said a word. He brought 6 pears, a carton of misugaru, and a single chocolate bar to register 4. "Late night for pears," Wendy said, scanning them. "The pears are better at night," the old man said in careful, accented English. "Fewer people touching them. And the young people are not here to tell me I should not eat the chocolate." He held up the bar like contraband. "My son, he thinks I'm made of glass. Your secret's safe with me." She bagged the chocolate first, conspiratorially, under the pears. He laughed, a dry, delighted little sound. He fumbled at his wallet. His hands weren't steady, and the cards were jammed tight, and he couldn't get the right one out. A younger cashier might have sighed. Wendy waited. When he finally produced a card and then dropped it, she came around the register, picked it up, and handed it back to him without a word about the delay. "You're very patient," the old man said, studying her. "Patience is rare. It means you are either very kind or very tired." "Can I be both?" he smiled. "Both is the most honest answer." He tapped the card. "What are you studying?" He'd seen the index card. "Nursing. Cranial nerves tonight. I keep losing number 8. Number 8. He considered this with the same gravity he'd given the pears. "When you are a nurse, you will be a good one. I can tell. You looked at an old man buying pears and you saw a person, not a delay." He took his bag. "Thank you, nurse. I'm not a nurse yet. You will be. I have decided." And he shuffled toward the door with his pears and his contraband chocolate, leaving Wendy smiling at her register at 1 a.m. for the first time in what felt like a long while. He never made it to the door. Here is what the old man with the pears did not know about the cashier who'd been kind to him. 2 years earlier, Wendy Achebe had a savings account with $11,000 in it. She had a 1-bedroom apartment with a real bed and a desk where she studied. She had a 3.8 GPA in an accredited nursing program, and she had a boyfriend named Damien. Damien was beautiful and broke and charming in the way that broke men learn to be charming, as a survival skill, a substitute for substance. He told Wendy he was between things, which stretched into a year of being between things while living in her apartment and eating her food and borrowing her car. She'd loved him. That was the part she couldn't forgive herself for. Not that he'd been a thief, but that she'd handed him the keys. She'd added him to her bank account because he said couples who trust each other don't keep secrets. She'd co-signed a credit card because his credit was temporarily wrecked. She'd believed that love was a thing you proved by lowering your defenses. He drained the savings account over 6 weeks. Small withdrawals, then large ones. He maxed the credit card. He took her car to look for work and sold it to a chop shop for cash. And on a Wednesday in October, while Wendy was at a 12-hour clinical rotation learning how to keep strangers alive, Damien packed a single bag and disappeared, leaving behind a maxed card in her name, an overdrawn account, a missing car she was still making payments on, and a note that said, "You'll be fine. You're the strong one." She was not fine. The debt ate her credit. The missing car payments became a lawsuit. She couldn't make tuition. The nursing program, which did not care about her reasons, dropped her for non-payment 3 semesters from the finish line. She lost the apartment. She moved into a studio the size of a parking space, with a hot plate and a window that looked at a brick wall. She took the night shift at the Han Mayhem Mart because it paid $1 more an hour and because nobody she knew would see her there. And then, this is the part that mattered, she clawed back. She re-enrolled part-time, paying per credit out of pocket, 1 class at a time. She made a payment plan with the collections agency. She rebuilt her credit point by humiliating point. She taped cranial nerves to a cash register and studied them at 1 a.m. because the version of her that became a nurse was not dead. She was just taking the long way, around. Damien had been right about one thing, and Wendy hated him for being right. She was the strong one. She just wished she hadn't had to prove it. She was thinking about Friday's tuition payment. $340 due, $300 in her account, $40 short, payday not until Monday, when the bell on the door chimed again. 4 men came in, and the night the old man bought his pears became something else entirely. The first thing Wendy noticed was that they didn't take baskets. 4 men, hoods up, moving with a purpose that had nothing to do with groceries. The second thing she noticed was the gun, already out in the lead man's hand, low against his thigh as he walked, the way you carry a thing you intend to raise. The third thing she noticed was that the old man with the pears had stopped near the exit, frozen, his bag held against his chest. The lead man raised the gun and fired into the ceiling. The sound in an enclosed supermarket was enormous, a physical thing that hit Wendy in the sternum. Tiles and dust rained down. Somewhere, an alarm should have gone off and didn't. "Everybody down, on the floor. Hands where I can see them. Now!" There were 6 people in the store. Wendy, the old man, a night shift stalker named June, who was 19 and already crying, a mother and her sleepy 7-year-old who'd come in for cough medicine, and the delivery driver who'd bought soy sauce and made the mistake of coming back for a forgotten phone. They went down. All of them. Wendy dropped behind her register, heart slamming, the cranial nerves evaporating from her mind, replaced by a single animal calculation. Stay small, stay quiet, stay alive. "Register, now, all of it." The lead man, tall, fast, the dangerous one, hauled Wendy up by her vest and shoved her at the register. Her hands were shaking so hard she mispunched the drawer code twice. He pressed the gun to her temple. "Third time, I shoot your hand off." The drawer opened. He dumped it into a bag. Behind him, the other 3 spread out. One watched the door, one herded the hostages into the center aisle, and the 4th, the one who hung back, who moved like he didn't want to be there, whose hood was pulled lowest, stood near the front and said nothing. And something about the set of his shoulders sent a cold finger down Wendy's spine that she didn't have time to understand. "The safe," the lead man said. "In the back. Manager's office. Let's go." "I don't have the code," Wendy said. "Only the manager. Then we wait for the manager, or we make a phone call to him with your finger." He shoved her toward the hostages. "Sit. Shut up." She sat. She made herself small. She watched the 4 men and counted exits, and tried to remember everything every crime documentary had ever taught her about staying alive, which boiled down to, don't be a hero, don't make eye contact, do what they say. And then the old man made a sound. It started as a grunt, then a gasp. Wendy turned and saw him on the floor a few feet away, the bag of pears spilled around him, his hand clawing at his own chest, his face the gray of wet cement. She knew that face. Every nursing student knew that face. It was on the first page of the cardiac chapter. "He's having a heart attack," she said before she could stop herself. "Shut up," said the lead man. "He's having a heart attack." She was already moving, across the floor on her knees toward the old man. "Get back." "He's going to die." She reached him. His lips were blue now. She put 2 fingers to his neck. No pulse she could find, not breathing. The textbook page flipped open in her head, clean and bright, and louder than her fear. Unresponsive. Not breathing. Begin compressions. She laced her hands over his sternum. The lead man crossed the room and put the gun against the back of her head. I said, "Get back." And Wendy Achebe, broke, exhausted, $40 short on tuition, with a gun against her skull, made the decision that would change every life in that building. She started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. She's doing CPR on a dying stranger with a gun to her head, and she will not stop. Now here's what she doesn't know yet. 3 things that are about to collide. 1, that old man is the father of the most powerful crime boss in the city. 2, that crime boss is already on his way, and he doesn't bring lawyers. He brings a tactical team, and he's in it. And 3, one of those 4 robbers is the ex-boyfriend who destroyed her life 2 years ago. Drop a if you already know this night is going to end with someone in handcuffs and someone in love. Subscribe. Let's keep going. 4 blocks away, on the 31st floor of a glass tower, Han Jae-sung was ending a meeting that three men had spent the evening dreading. He was 33. He ran the Han organization, and the Han organization was two things stacked on top of each other like a magician's box. On top, in the light, Han Security Solutions, a legitimate private firm that provided executive protection, tactical consulting, and event security to corporations, embassies, and people whose lives required professionals. Underneath, in the dark, everything else. The part that didn't have a website, Jae-sung had built the legitimate company himself, partly as a laundry and partly because he had discovered he was genuinely good at the work, at reading a room, at controlling a space, at the cold geometry of keeping a principle alive. He trained with his own operators. He ran scenarios with them. When a job mattered, he didn't send the team. He went with it. Tonight, no job mattered. He was tired. He was thinking about whether his father had eaten and whether the old man had snuck out for chocolate again when the phone on the table buzzed. It was the detail. His father refused bodyguards inside stores. "I want to buy my own pears like a normal man," Jae-sung. "Wait in the car or wait at home, but do not follow me down the aisle like I'm a head of state." So the detail waited outside. Two men, one car, eyes on the entrance. Jae-sung answered. "Speak." "Sir," the voice was wrong, tight, fast. "We have a situation at the Hanmayam Mart. 4 armed males entered 90 seconds ago. Shots fired inside. Your father's in the store. We did not have eyes inside. We're holding position. Do we breach?" The world went very quiet and very sharp. Jae-sung was already standing. "Do not breach. 4 armed. You're 2. You'll get hostages killed. Hold. Eyes on every exit. Has anyone come out?" "No, sir." "Police?" "Inbound. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. In 6 minutes, a heart can stop. In 6 minutes, a panicking man with a gun can do unrecoverable things." "I'm 4 minutes out," Jae-sung said. "Get the van. Full kit. I'm coming down." He was at the elevator before the call ended. The 3 men he'd been meeting with, hard men, men who did not flinch, flinched at the look on his face, because they had never seen it before. They had seen Jae-sung cold. They had seen him cruel. They had never seen him afraid. "My father," he said to no one, to the elevator doors, to the city sliding down past the glass. "My father is in there." In the van, pulling on body armor, he made one call to the tactical lead, already rolling from the other direction. "Listen to me carefully," Jae-sung said, and his voice had gone to the place it went when it stopped being a voice and started being an instrument. "There are hostages. My father is one of them, and he has a bad heart. The objective is not the robbers. The objective is keeping everyone in that store alive, and that includes whoever might be helping my father. If someone in there is keeping him breathing, that person is the most important human being in the city tonight. You protect them like they are me. Are we clear?" "Clear!" He pulled the armor tight. He checked his weapon with hands that did not shake, because he had trained for years to keep his hands from shaking, and he was glad now for every cold hour of it. He had spent his whole life learning that the world only takes, that you protect what is yours by being more frightening than whatever wants to take it. He had never, not once, expected the world to give him anything. He was 4 minutes from being wrong about that. 28, 29, 30? Wendy tilted the old man's head, pinched his nose, and gave 2 breaths. His chest rose. She went back to compressions. 1, 2, 3. The gun was still against her head, but the lead man, his name she'd learned later was Marcus, had stopped shouting. Because a thing was happening that none of the 4 robbers had a plan for. They had planned for a register and a safe. They had not planned for a dying man and a woman who would not be moved. "You're going to stop," Marcus said. But it had lost its authority. It was almost a question now. "I'm not," Wendy said between compressions. "Here's, what's happening? This man is somebody's father, somebody's grandfather, and right now I'm the only thing standing between him and a body bag. If he dies, this is a murder. Murder changes everything about how tonight ends for you, so whether you like it or not, I am the best friend you have in this room." Because I am the only one trying to keep your charge from becoming a life sentence. Marcus stared at her. Now I need someone to find the AED, she went on, not stopping. It's a white box on the wall by the pharmacy counter, red heart on it. Somebody get it. I don't care which one of you. You want to be useful? Be useful. And here's the thing about authority. It goes to whoever picks it up. In that moment, on that floor, the woman doing compressions with a gun to her head had more command in her voice than the man holding it. The robber who'd been watching the door, younger, scared, actually took a step toward the pharmacy before Marcus barked, "Stay!" But the spell had shifted. Everyone in that room, robber and hostage alike, was now orbiting the woman on the floor. Everyone except the fourth man, the one who hung back, the one whose hood was lowest. He had been drifting closer the whole time, drawn against his will, and now he was close enough that Wendy, glancing up for half a second to check the door, to check the lights now strobing across the lot, caught a piece of his face under the hood. A jaw she'd kissed. A scar above an eyebrow she'd asked about on a second date. Eyes she'd once thought she'd wake up next to for the rest of her life. Her hands faltered on the old man's chest, just for one compression, just for one beat. "Damien," she said. The fourth robber went absolutely still. For 2 years, Wendy had imagined what she would say to Damien if she ever saw him again. She'd rehearsed it in the shower, on the bus, at her register at 3 a.m. Cold things, devastating things, things that would make him understand the size of the crater he'd left. She had never once imagined saying his name like this, as a question, on her knees with her hands inside a stranger's heartbeat and a gun at her head and her ex-boyfriend standing over her in a robber's hood. Damien's eyes went wide. The recognition hit him a half second after it hit her. He had not known. He had picked this store off a map, a cash business, late hours, soft target. He had not known that the cashier behind Register 4 was the woman whose life he'd dismantled and walked away from. He had robbed her once without a gun. Now he was robbing her again with one, and the universe had arranged for him to learn this at the worst possible moment. "Wendy," he said, barely a breath. "You know her?" Marcus snapped. "Wendy, what are you?" Damien's voice was coming apart. "You work here?" "You'd know where I work," Wendy said, and her voice was steady even though nothing else was. "If you'd ever once wondered what happened to me after you took my car and my savings and my future and left a note that said I'd be fine." Compression. Compression. "I wasn't fine, Damien. I'm a cashier doing CPR with a gun to my head. This is fine. You did this." "I didn't." "You did something," Marcus roared, the situation spinning out of his hands. "You know this girl. You're standing there with your mouth open. Focus. Focus." And that was the moment the front windows lit up white, not red and blue anymore. White, the clean, blinding white of tactical lights, a dozen of them, snapping on at once across the front of the store. A voice on a loudspeaker, calm and enormous. "This is a controlled response. The building is surrounded. We are coming in. Do not point weapons at the doors." Marcus spun toward the windows. Damien shrank back. The young one by the door dropped his gun and put his hands up before anyone had even told him to. And Wendy bent back over the old man, made herself into a shield over his body, and kept counting. 1, 2, 3. The team is breaching. Her ex is unraveling. The old man's heart is in her hands, and the man about to come through that door has a personal stake nobody in that store understands yet. If your heart is pounding right now, that's the point. Hit that like button so this hits more people, and tell me in the comments, at this exact second, who are you more scared for, Wendy or the old man? Let's finish this. It took 11 seconds. That was the thing people never understood about a professional breach. It wasn't the chaos of the movies. It was the opposite of chaos. It was geometry executed at speed. The doors came open. Figures moved in a line, low and fast, each one covering a sector, voices flat and overlapping. "Down, down, weapon hands, don't move." Marcus made the only truly stupid decision left to him and started to raise his gun toward the hostages. the instinct of a cornered man to grab leverage, and a single controlled shot took him in the shoulder and spun him to the floor before the barrel cleared his hip. The young one at the door was already cuffed. The third man went down under two operators without a shot fired. And Damien dropped his gun, fell to his knees, and put his hands on his head, screaming, "I'm not resisting! I'm not resisting! I'm not!" with the specific terror of a man who had wandered into something so far over his head that the sky had disappeared. 11 seconds. Then, a silence so total that the loudest sound in the supermarket was a 25-year-old woman counting. 29, 30, 2 breaths. 1, 2, 3. One of the tactical figures broke from the formation and crossed the floor toward her, fast, dropping to a knee at the old man's side. Wendy didn't look up. She didn't have the spare attention. "Heart attack," she said in the clipped shorthand of a professional, even though she wasn't one yet. "Down at least 4 minutes. I've been doing continuous compressions and rescue breaths, no AED. I need a defibrillator and a medic now." "Medic's behind me," the figure said. A man's voice, low, steady, with something underneath it that was not steady at all. "Keep going. Don't stop for me." "I wasn't going to." The medic arrived. The defibrillator came out. "Clear," the medic said, and Wendy lifted her hands for the first time in 11 minutes, and the old man's body jumped, and the monitor that someone had slapped onto his chest went from a flat scream to a jagged, beautiful, irregular rhythm. A pulse. The old man had a pulse. Wendy sat back on her heels, and her arms, which had not stopped for 11 minutes, began to shake violently, the adrenaline finally finding nowhere left to go. And the tactical figure kneeling across from her reached up and pulled off his helmet. He was Korean, early 30s. A hard, beautiful, exhausted face, with eyes that were fixed on the old man's chest as it rose and fell with the rhythm Wendy had bought him. He looked at the old man for a long moment. His jaw worked. Then he looked at Wendy. And Han Jae-sung, a man who had spent his entire life believing the world only took, looked at the stranger who had just given him back his father and did not have a single word in any of the 3 languages he spoke for what he was feeling. "That's my father," he said finally. His voice cracked on the word father, and he let it. "You, with a gun on you, you—" "He bought pears," Wendy said. It made no sense, and it was the only thing in her head. Her arms were shaking, her face was wet, and she didn't know when that had happened. "He bought pears and chocolate, and he said I'd make a good nurse, and then he went down, and I couldn't just let him—" "I know," Jae-sung said. Is he going to—" "You tell me," Jae-sung said. "You're the nurse." "I'm not a nurse yet," Wendy whispered. Jae-sung looked at his father breathing on the floor of a discount supermarket because of this woman's hands, and at this woman shaking apart now that the danger was past, and he said, very quietly, in a tone that would have terrified the 3 men upstairs, "You are tonight." She saved his father, with a gun to her head, and the Korean Mafia Boss just looked at a cashier like she rearranged the entire universe, because she did. But we are not done. Because in about 30 seconds, Wendy is going to look at the man being dragged out in handcuffs, and the whole story is going to turn again. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Comment pears if that old man already has your whole heart. Let's go. The paramedics, real ones now, the cities, flooding in behind the tactical team, lifted the old man onto a gurney. Oxygen mask, IV, the monitor steady. Ja-sung stood, and for a moment he was torn visibly in 2 directions, toward the gurney carrying his father and toward the woman still kneeling on the floor. "Go with him," Wendy said, reading it. I'm fine, go." "You're coming." "Too," Jae-sung said. It wasn't a request. "You don't leave his side until a doctor with more letters after their name than you tells you to. Understood, nurse?" She almost laughed. It came out as something closer to a sob. "Understood." And then, as they wheeled the gurney toward the doors, the operators hauled the robbers up off the floor one by one to walk them out, and Wendy, climbing to her feet on legs that didn't want to hold her, found herself face to face with Damien, cuffed. Hood pulled back now, his face fully visible for the first time in 2 years. He looked older, worse. The charm had curdled into something desperate, and when he looked at her, there was no remorse in it. There never had been remorse in him, she understood now. That was the whole problem. There had never been anything underneath the charm but more charm. There was only fear and the specific grasping calculation of a man looking for an exit. Wendy. He leaned toward her as the operator held him. Wendy, listen to me. You have to tell them. Tell them I didn't want to do this. Tell them I'm not like these guys. You know me. You know me. And Wendy Achebe looked at the man who had taken her savings, her car, her degree, her apartment, and 2 years of her life. The man who had just held a gun in the store where she was rebuilding from the rubble he'd left. And she discovered that all those cold, devastating speeches she'd rehearsed in the shower for 2 years had evaporated because they weren't necessary anymore. I don't know you, she said, quiet, clean, final. I never did. I knew a story you told me, and the story just got arrested. She turned her back on him and followed the gurney out. Behind her, Damien called her name twice, then a third time. Then the doors closed, and she didn't hear the fourth. Jae-sung had heard all of it. He stood at the ambulance doors, watching this woman walk away from the cuffed man without a backward glance, and he filed it, the way he filed everything, under a category he was only just discovering he had. People who were stronger than me. That man, he said as she reached him. The one who said your name. Wendy stopped, looked at him, decided in the wreckage of the worst and strangest night of her life to simply tell the truth. My ex-boyfriend. From 2 years ago. He cleaned out my bank account, sold my car, maxed out cards in my name, and disappeared. He's the reason I dropped out of nursing school. He's the reason I work nights at a supermarket. A breath. I didn't know he was one of them. I swear I didn't. I haven't seen him in 2 years, and then he's standing over me in a hood while I'm doing CPR on your... Stop, Jae-sung said gently. I believe you. I read people for a living. You didn't know. The gurney was loaded. The medic called for them. Ride with my father, Jae-sung said. I'll follow. And Wendy, it was the first time he'd said her name. He'd gotten it from the chaos, from someone, and he said it like he was testing whether it fit in his mouth. We're going to have a longer conversation, but not tonight. Tonight you just keep him breathing. Can you do that? I've been doing it all night, Wendy said, and climbed into the ambulance. The old man, Han Du-shik, Wendy learned his name from his hospital bracelet, went into surgery for a stent at 2:14 a.m. A blockage. The cardiologist, a tired woman with kind eyes, told Jae-sung that his father had coded in the field, and that the only reason he was alive to be on her table was that someone had done textbook, uninterrupted, high-quality CPR for over 10 minutes. Who did that? The cardiologist asked. EMS? A cashier, Jae-sung said. A nursing student. The cardiologist looked at Wendy, slumped in a plastic chair in a blood-stained supermarket vest, and said, Young lady, when you graduate, you come find me. I'll hire you on the spot. And she went back through the doors. So now it was 3 a.m., and there was nothing to do but wait, and there were 2 vending machines in a row of plastic chairs and 2 people who had no idea how to be near each other when they weren't running for their lives. Jae-sung bought 2 coffees. They were terrible. He handed her one anyway. I own 12 restaurants, he said, sitting down a careful seat away from her. And I cannot do anything about hospital coffee. It defeats all of us equally. There is a strange comfort in that. Wendy huffed a laugh into the cup. 12 restaurants. Among other things? What other things? He was quiet for a moment. Then, security. I run a security company. Tonight you saw the part of it that wears armor. Which was true, and was also the part of the truth he could say in a hospital waiting room at 3 a.m. to a woman who had been through enough. That explains the entrance, Wendy said. Most people's sons don't show up to a hostage situation in tactical gear. My father refuses bodyguards inside stores, Jae-sung said. He says he wants to buy his own pears like a normal man. His voice did something complicated on the word pears. He bought pears tonight, like he does every week, and he nearly died next to them, and the only reason he didn't— He stopped, started again. I have spent my entire life learning how to protect him. I had 2 men outside that store, 2 trained men, 40 feet away. And in the end, the person who saved him was a stranger he'd known for 20 minutes, who he'd told he liked because she was patient. He looked at her. He has good instincts, my father. He liked the right person. Wendy didn't know what to do with that, so she did what exhausted people do at 3 a.m. She told the truth. She told him about the nursing program, about Damien, about the $11,000 in the sold car and the note that said you'll be fine, about the studio apartment and the night shifts and the cranial nerves taped to the register, about being $40 short on tuition this very Friday, a problem that, 4 hours ago, had felt like the end of the world and now felt almost quaint, a postcard from a simpler life. Jae-sung listened the way he did everything, completely. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer to fix it, which she would have hated. He just listened, and at the end he said, "You re-enrolled, after all of that, 1 class at a time." "Yeah. While working nights." "Yeah. Why?" Wendy looked at the terrible coffee. "Because the version of me that becomes a nurse wasn't dead. She was just taking the long way around." She shrugged, embarrassed. "My mom crossed an ocean with 2 suitcases. I figured I could cross a city with a hot plate." Jae-sung was quiet for a long moment. "Tonight," he said, "the long way around put you on the floor of a supermarket at the exact moment my father's heart stopped. If you had finished school on time, you'd be in a hospital somewhere, and he'd be dead." He turned the cheap coffee in his hands. "I don't believe in fate. In my line of work, believing in fate gets you killed, but I am having a difficult night with that position." At 4:40 a.m., the cardiologist came out and said the stent was placed, the patient was stable, the prognosis was good, and that Mr. Han was awake and, her mouth twitched, asking for the nurse who isn't a nurse yet. They went in together. Han Du-shik lay in the bed looking small and tired and very much alive. When he saw Wendy, his whole face changed. He reached out a hand threaded with an IV line and she took it. "Nurse," he said. "I'm not—" "Stop." He squeezed her hand with surprising strength. I was on the floor. I felt my heart stop. I've never told anyone this, but I felt it stop, and I thought, so this is the end. In a supermarket. This is undignified. Jae-sung will be so angry. He smiled faintly. And then there were hands, pushing, counting, refusing. Someone refused to let me go. His eyes filled. "You refused to let me go. With a gun on you, my son tells me. You did not even know me." "You bought pears," Wendy said again, helplessly, and the old man laughed and then winced because laughing hurt. He looked past her at his son. "Jae-sung," he said in Korean, and then, deliberately, in English, so Wendy would understand. "This girl gave me my heartbeat back. Whatever she needs, whatever it costs, you understand me. You treat her like she gave you yours." A pause. "Because she did. You only have me because of her." Jae-sung looked at his father and at Wendy and said, "I know, Appa. Good." The old man settled back satisfied, the autocrat of his own hospital bed. Now, did the chocolate survive? The gratitude arrived the way Wendy had been afraid it would, as money. 2 days later, a man in a good suit came to her studio apartment, found it without her giving the address, which told her something, and presented her with an envelope and a folder. The envelope contained a check large enough to make her sit down. The folder contained a package, full tuition for the remainder of her nursing degree, paid directly to the school, the clearing of her old debt, a car, an apartment in a building she could never have afforded, available immediately. "Mr. Han wishes to express his gratitude," the man said. Wendy looked at the check for a long time. Then she put it back in the envelope and handed it to him. "Tell Mr. Han thank you," she said, "and tell him no." The man blinked. People did not apparently say no. "I didn't do CPR for a reward," Wendy said. "I did it because a man was dying and I had hands. The second I take this check, the best thing I ever did becomes a transaction. It stops being the night I saved a life and becomes the night I got paid. I won't sell it, not even for this much, especially not for this much." She did keep one thing. She thought about it, and she kept one thing. And the way she chose it told Jae-sung, when the man reported back, more about her than any psychological profile his people could have assembled. She kept the tuition, directly to the school, nothing to her hands. "Because that's not a gift to me," she told the man. "That's an investment in everybody I'm going to keep alive for the next 40 years. Your boss's father included, apparently, if he keeps eating chocolate. The tuition isn't for me, it's for my future patients. I'll take that. Tell him I said the patients accept, I don't." When the man relayed this, word for word, Jae-sung was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Cancel my 8 o'clock. I'm going to the hospital. And find out what flowers a woman likes when she's explicitly refused to be bought." "Sir?" "It's a genuine logistics problem," Jae-sung said. "She's the first person who's ever made me solve it. She turned down a fortune and kept only the tuition, and only because it belonged to her future patients, not to her. The Korean Mafia Boss has met a lot of people. He has never met that. If you respect Wendy as much as he does, smash that like button. We're heading into the part where the man who destroyed her gets exactly what he earned, and where a crime boss tries to figure out how to love a woman who can't be bought. Subscribe. Almost there. Damien's night in the supermarket was the worst decision of a life made entirely of bad decisions, and not for the reason he thought. He thought the worst part was getting caught. The worst part was who he had nearly killed. Armed robbery, aggravated because of the firearm, unlawful imprisonment, 6 counts, 1 for every hostage, and, because the old man had coded on that floor, a charge that carried the word attempted in front of something very serious, on the theory that the robbery directly caused a foreseeable life-threatening medical event. That was the public case, the clean one. The one that ran through courtrooms and would have put Damien away for a long time on its own. But there was another layer, and it surfaced the way deep things surface when a powerful man decides to disturb the water. Jae-sung's people, the part of the company without a website, did not lay a finger on Damien. They didn't have to. They did something far more devastating. They did Wendy's paperwork. For 2 years, Wendy had never had the money or the lawyers to pursue Damien for what he'd done to her, the drained account, the fraudulent credit, the sold car. It had simply been a wound she absorbed, the way poor people are forced to absorb the crimes committed against them by people who know they can't fight back. Now, someone with infinite resources assembled the case she never could. Bank records, the forged co-signature, the chop shop receipt with his name a clumsy alias away from his own. 2 years of financial crime, documented, notarized, and handed, quietly, legally, with no fingerprints on it, to a prosecutor who was already building the robbery case and was delighted to find the defendant had a pattern. Damien didn't just face the robbery. He faced the woman he'd robbed twice, with the full weight of evidence he'd always assumed she was too broke and too broken to gather. He tried once to use her. He sent a message through his lawyer. Would Wendy speak on his behalf, characterize him as non-violent, mention their history, their love? Wendy read the message. She thought about the note. "You'll be fine. You're the strong one." She wrote back 4 words, through the lawyer, on the record. He was never violent. He was just always a thief. Those are different crimes, and he committed both. And then she went to class because she had a pharmacology exam, and she had patients to keep alive for the next 40 years, and Damien was no longer one of the things she carried. He went away for a long time. The man who left her stranded ended up stranded himself, in a cell, with 2 cases against him brought by the same woman 2 years apart, the second one assembled by powers he never saw and would never understand. Han Du-shik appointed himself the project manager of his son's love life from a hospital bed, and then from a recliner at home, and he was relentless. "Bring the nurse to Sunday dinner," he told Jae-sung. "She's not a nurse yet, Appa, and she's busy. She has school and work, and—" "She quit the night shift," Du-shik said serenely. "I had the tuition paid. She has time now. Bring her Sunday. I am old and I nearly died, and you will not deny a dying man. You're not dying. The cardiologist said you're healthier than me. I am dying slowly, like everyone, and I want to see the nurse. Bring her." So Wendy came to Sunday dinner. She came because the old man invited her, and she adored the old man. And if a crime boss happened to live in the same house, that was a logistics problem she'd solve when she got there. The dinner was enormous. Du-shik cooked despite being forbidden to, and held court, and fed Wendy until she begged for mercy and told her embarrassing stories about Jae-sung as a child. The time he tried to arrest a neighbor's dog, the time he organized the other 6-year-olds into a security detail for the kindergarten. Wendy laughed until she cried. Jae-sung sat at the end of the table with the specific expression of a powerful man being completely dismantled by his father, in front of a woman he was trying to impress and bearing it, because the sound of Wendy laughing was worth any amount of dignity. After dinner, on the back terrace with the city glittering below, Wendy and Jae-sung finally had the longer conversation he'd promised her in a supermarket a month earlier. "You should know what I actually am," he said, and he told her. Not all of it, not the parts that would make her an accessory to knowledge she didn't want, but enough. The shape of it. The two boxes stacked on top of each other, the light on top and the dark underneath. He told her because she had told him the truth in a waiting room at 3 a.m., and he refused to be the second man in her life to build something on a lie. Wendy was quiet for a long time, looking at the city. "I keep people alive," she said finally. "That's the whole thing I am. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to be. And you're telling me you're in a business where sometimes the opposite happens." "Sometimes," Jae-sung said. He didn't flinch from it. "I won't lie to you about what I am. I will never lie to you. That's the one thing I can promise that's worth anything. Everything else about me is complicated. That isn't." "Why are you telling me? You could have just been the security guy, the restaurant guy. I'd never have known." "Because you turned down a fortune, so the best thing you ever did wouldn't become a transaction," Jae-sung said. "I have spent my whole life turning everything into a transaction. It's the only language I'm fluent in. And then a cashier did CPR on my father with a gun to her head and refused to take a check for it. And I realized I'd never met anyone who understood the thing my father has been trying to teach me my whole life." He looked at her. "That some things you do because a person is dying and you have hands, not because of what you get back." Wendy looked at this dangerous, honest, exhausted man, the son of an old man who bought his own pears, and she made the decision she made best. Clear-eyed, no illusions, choosing the truth over the story. "I'm not going to pretend I understand your world," she said. "And I'm never going to be part of the dark box. I keep people alive. That's the deal. That's non-negotiable." "I would never ask you to be anything other than exactly what you are," Jae-sung said. "What you are is the reason I still have a father." "Then we start there," Wendy said. "Honestly, slowly, and the first time you lie to me, I'm gone, crime boss or not. I've already survived one man who built a whole relationship out of lies. I won't do it twice, not even for someone who sends a tactical team to save the day." "That's fair," Jae-sung said. "That's more than fair." A pause, and then, with the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth, "For what it's worth, the tactical team was for my father. You I would have walked through the front door for." Wendy laughed, and somewhere inside the house, Han Du-shik, who had absolutely been listening at the window, made a small, triumphant sound and went to find the good tea. 2 years later, Wendy Achebe graduated. She walked across the stage in a hospital auditorium to accept her nursing pin, and in the third row, refusing to sit in the reserved VIP seating, insisting on being with the normal people, sat an old man in a quilted vest who cried openly and without shame and held up a sign he had made himself in slightly crooked English letters, "My Nurse." Beside him, in a dark suit, a dangerous and quietly devastated man clapped for a woman who had told him on a terrace 2 years earlier that the first lie would be the last day, and who had never once had cause to leave because he had never once lied to her. The cardiologist with the kind eyes kept her promise. Wendy was hired onto the cardiac unit. The irony delighted everyone, where she became, in very short order, exactly the nurse the old man had predicted she'd be the night he bought his pears. The one who looked at frightened people and saw persons, not patients. The one who was patient because she was both very kind and very tired. The one who refused to let go. The bookend came on an ordinary Tuesday, on her shift, when a new patient was wheeled into the cardiac unit complaining of chest discomfort. Wendy pulled the chart, walked into the room, and found Han Du-shik lying in the bed, the picture of innocence, perfectly healthy, with a bag of pears on the side table and a chocolate bar, hidden, badly, under his pillow. "Appa," Wendy said, using the name she'd earned the right to use, "there's nothing wrong with your heart. Your cardiologist is literally on this floor. I can see her from here." "I had a discomfort," Du-shik said with enormous dignity. "A discomfort of the spirit. The only cure is to see my nurse at her work and bring her pears." He produced the chocolate from under the pillow. "And to eat this before my son arrives." "You are unbelievable." "I nearly died." "I'm allowed to be unbelievable. It's in the cardiac chapter, I'm sure. Right after number 8. He winked. He had, at some point in the last 2 years, made her teach him the cranial nerves out of sheer devotion. "Olfactory, optic, oculomotor, you see? I remember number 8 now. Vestibulocochlear, the one you always lost." Wendy sat down on the edge of the bed of the man whose heart she'd restarted on a supermarket floor, took one of his pears, and felt, for the first time in years, entirely, completely, unconditionally fine. Not the fine from the note, not the lie a man had left her with, the real kind. The kind you build with your own hands, one class at a time, one compression at a time, one honest day at a time. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jae-sung. "My father's not in the cardiac unit pretending to be sick again, is he?" She looked at the old man inhaling contraband chocolate. She typed back, "Absolutely not. Also bring more chocolate. He's almost out." A pause. Then, "He gave you his heartbeat back and you're enabling him." "I keep people alive," she typed. "It's the whole thing I am, even from himself." "I'll bring the chocolate, and the good kind, not the supermarket kind." "He'll know the difference. He's a connoisseur. He selects them like diamonds." "I know," Jae-sung wrote back. "He taught me that some small good things are worth taking your time over." A beat. It took me 33 years and a cashier with a gun to her head to understand what he meant. Wendy set the phone down. The old man offered her a square of chocolate. She took it. Outside the window, the city went about its business, full of people taking the short way around, never knowing that the long way, the hard way, the way through the rubble and the night shift and the gun and the counting, sometimes deposits you exactly, precisely, where you were always supposed to be. "1," the old man said, holding up the chocolate, teasing her, starting the count she'd started over his stopped heart. "2," Wendy said, and bit the chocolate and laughed. There was no 3. There didn't need to be. She'd already saved him. The rest was just the good part. And that is what happens when a woman refuses to let go. Wendy didn't save Han Du-shik because he was rich. She didn't even know he was rich. She saved him because he was a person on the floor, and she had hands, and she'd taped the cardiac chapter to a cash register at 1 a.m. because she refused to let one thieving ex-boyfriend decide who she got to become. She did CPR with a gun to her head. She told a robber he was the best friend she had in that room. She turned down a fortune because she wouldn't let the best thing she ever did become a receipt. And she told a crime boss that the first lie would be the last day. And he believed her because she was the kind of person who meant it. Damien thought he left her stranded. He thought the note was true. You'll be the strong one, like it was a sentence, a punishment, a thing he was doing to her. But strength isn't a punishment. Strength is what's left when someone takes everything else. And Wendy had more of it than he had imagination to steal. He came back with a gun to rob the store where she was rebuilding her life, and he walked out in handcuffs into a case she'd never been able to afford to build until the universe handed her a reason and the resources in the same impossible night. The old man was right about her in 20 minutes. You looked at an old man buying pears and you saw a person, not a delay. That's the whole story. That's everything. The people who see persons instead of delays are the people who run toward the dying stranger while everyone else is counting exits. If this one hit you, if you teared up when the monitor went from a flat line to a heartbeat, if you wanted to stand up and cheer when she told Damien, "I never knew you, I knew a story you told me," then do me a favor. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new, because we tell stories this big every single week. And comment below. What was your moment? The counting, the pears. You were tonight, the check she refused, or the old man in the third row with a sign that said, "My nurse"? I'm reading every single one. Share this with someone who's rebuilding from rubble somebody else left them in. Tell them the long way around isn't the wrong way. Sometimes it's the only road that passes through the supermarket at the exact moment a heart stops. And somebody needs your hands. I'll see you in the next one. Don't be late, and don't ever stop counting.